They say some spirits cross quietly. No tolling bell, no thunder, only a breath leaping and then gone. Yet sometimes love will not permit the leaping. It tethers what should pass to what remains unfinished. Tonight's whisper drifts across snowfields and torn aluminum, over tree lines where radios die and wind learns a human name. A father, a son, and a promise. The kind of promise you make when the world is still warm, and keep when it turns to ice. I did not bargain for this story. I only watched it happen. Listening carefully. If you listen as well, you may hear footsteps in the drifts. You may hear a boy calling, or perhaps you will hear nothing at all. And that too will be the truth.
Evan pressed his face to the oval window and fogged the glass with little circles of breath. The lake was already a memory, slate water cutting through pines like a scar. He tapped the plastic and said,
Dad, when we get home, can we put the tent up in the living room again?
Deal, I told him. But only if you let your sister be expedition leader. He laughed, all teeth and summer. There are sounds that tell you how old a person is. That laugh was an 8. Just like him, 8 years old. He drew for a while. Markers from his backpack, a napkin, wrestling the lines. When he finished, he slid the napkin to me. A stick figure family. Mom with a halo of hair, his little sister holding a stuffed rabbit, me with a briefcase, and him with a camp flag. Across the top, in shaky letters, "Together again," was writ. I was about to tell him I'd keep it in my wallet when the lights dimmed. Not a flicker, more like a held breath. The engine hum shifted half a note lower. The plane leveled and sagged. A drink rattled on the tray behind me. Someone laughed too loudly to be truly calm. I checked Evan's belt. Snug. We were in row 17, middle of the cabin. Across the aisle, a girl in a pink coat hiccuped with tears. Her mother leaned across an empty seat, hands open, not quite reaching. I unbuckled. "Give me 2 seconds," I told Evan, and stood. The world lurched. The aisle turned sideways, trays jackknifed. Masks snapped down like hanging ghosts. I had made it 3 steps, got the girl's hand, and then the skin of the plane screamed. Light tore through the ceiling. Luggage became hail. Somebody shouted a name that was not mine. We came apart. Not just the plane, I mean time. Direction. The rules I trusted. Everything rushed away from me. I saw Evan's face once more between the seats. Round with terror, mouth opening for a cry I couldn't hear. And then the cabin blew outward like a pop-up book slamming shut. When I woke, the sky was white. Not clouds, white. That begins on the ground and keeps glowing up. Forever. Snow packed my ears, my mouth, my eyelids. My hands found metal and pain. I rolled, coughed, and the world returned in pieces. The rear fuselage lay like a beached whale half a field away. Seats splayed, belts fluttering. A winglet jutted from the trees, as if the forest had grown aluminum. My shoulder burned. Blood had frozen on my temple in a thin, black rain. I could still move my fingers, one by one. I could still say his name.
Evan!
The answer was silence, pure and heavy, the kind that makes you feel impolite for breathing. I stood because not standing felt like the permission to die. I found a half-zipped carry-on under a drift and took what made sense without thinking. Thermal blanket, granola bars, a lighter, a scarf that smelled like a stranger's laundry. The napkin drawing was still in my shirt pocket. I folded it smaller and tucked it into my wallet beside our last family photo from the cabin dock. The rear section left a trail of debris, like breadcrumbs. I followed where the snow allowed, weaving through scabs of wreckage and toward spruce. The map in my head placed the middle section east, the noise farther still. The sun was a dim coin, and I set off with it to my left shoulder. Time in the snow is a rumor. I walked until the light thinned and the wind thickened. I built a mean little fire in the lee of a tailcoat and kept my boots angled toward the heat. At some point I slept without meaning to. My dreams were bright, Evan splashing from the dock, my wife waving a towel like a flag. I woke to the numbness in my toes and fed the fire a little feminine. On the second day, call it second because the sky did something like morning, I saw tracks, small, deep, punched, angling between stumps, keen-edged, not melted, each one a stamp of possibility. I said his name again, softer, as if the forest would spook.
Evan.
Sometimes the wind would answer with a curl that lifted the hairs on my neck. Sometimes it said nothing, and that nothing was kinder. I marked trees with a shard of aluminum. 1 slash for forward, 2 for back, because the world repeated itself out here. The same white hill, same black trunks, same dead hush that slid in after any noise, like a closing door. There were no other survivors, as far as I could tell. I hadn't seen a single other person. It was nothing but this endless silence. By late night, I reached a scar in the snow. A trench plowed by something heavy. Luggage, seats, a beverage cart half submerged in the ground like a tombstone. Beyond it, 20 yards, the middle fuselage hunched with its spine cracked. I ran, tripped, ran again. The first body stopped me in my tracks, then the second. I couldn't do this, but I had to. I went seat by seat. Names formed in my mouth without voices to receive them. I checked belts, Faces, hands. At row 11, a belt hung severed. A child's seat, empty. A smear a few inches long where a blade had cut webbing in a hurry. "Evan," I said, and the word was the warmest thing in the cabin. I found a child's jacket snagged on a latch, blue, with a rocket ship patch half torn. It was his. I knew it. I pressed it to my face until the cold punished me for the tenderness. Outside again, the footprints resumed, smaller now. Staggering sometimes, but forward, always forward. I tripped and ate some snow. A stone had caught me, just at the ankle. I told myself this was fine. This would be fine. He would be alive. The third night was the worst. The fire would not keep. It just sputtered. My hands pretended to be other people's hands. I saw a light bobbing between the trees and followed it until it was the moon, and not even that. When the laughter came, soft, high, it was a boy's, a young boy's. I almost broke running. It laced between the trunks ahead, skipping, delighted. "Wait," I said, like we were playing at the lake. "Wait for me, bud." The laughter stopped, as if a switch had been thrown. The quiet after the laughter is heavier than other quiets. I stood there and listened. My heart beat. It beat as if it belonged to someone worth listening to. Morning came like an apology. Thin, late, reluctant. I found smoke just after noon. A crooked ribbon staining the sky gray. I followed it up a rise and down a chute, and there, tucked under a slanted slab of wing, a little fire that wanted to be believed. He was there, wrapped in a mylar blanket, with his knees under his chin, cheeks raw as apples, eyes too large in his face. He looked up at the sound of my steps, and his mouth made the shape of my name before his voice even caught up.
Dad!
I don't remember crossing that last few feet. I remember heat, a human heat that made the rest of the world feel like a rumor. I remembered his hair stiff with frost against his mouth. I remember saying, "I've got you. I've got you." Until it became a spell. We fed the reluctant fire and watched it chew the tiniest bite from the winter cold. He had scavenged well. 2 flares, a whistle, a granola bar he'd only nibbled to make it last. He showed me a cut on his thumb with pride.
I did this with a seatbelt. Dad, I remembered what you said about the knives.
I kissed the crown of his head and pretended not to cry into his hat. We needed height. Our ridge shouldered up behind the clearing. Its back to the wind. I took one flare. He took the other. We climbed side by stubborn side, in the snow surprising both of us with holes and hidden branches. At the top, the world widened into a white amphitheater. "Okay, Brud," I said, and let him load the flare so his hands could feel brave doing it. The pistol barked and wrote a red wound in the sky. The color looked impossible here. It made a sound in my chest I hadn't heard since before the lights dimmed on the plane. We waited. The wind worked on our coats like small, cold, patient hands. Then, there, off on the horizon, a black dot against the cloud lid, turning, enlarging. Evan whooped with joy, and the sound put life back into the trees. I waved both arms, and my heart trying to climb out to see better. Men in red parkas ghosted from the snow with ropes and competence. One knelt in front of Evan and put a mitted hand on his shoulder. Another spoke into a radio as if words could summon summer. I kept my hands on Evan's shoulders because I did not trust the world not to misplace him again. They wrapped him in a thicker blanket and clipped a sling around his chest. He didn't like that. He looked back at me and grabbed my jacket.
Dad?
He said, as if the word itself could veto the harness. "It's okay," I told him. "I'm right here. I'll be right behind you." They lifted him. The air made a fist of his blanket, and the rescuer adjusted it, careful and practiced. Evan reached, and I reached, and our hands met for one more second. "I promise, I'll be right here," I said again, because sometimes the truth needs to echo, just to stay true. They swung him toward the helicopter. The door yawned. A woman leaned out, goggles, hood, a face I knew all too well. My wife. The shape of her shoulders collapsed with relief, the way they do when you've held more weight than any body should. She took our son like receiving a miracle you hadn't permitted yourself to pray for. I laughed then, an ugly yet perfect laugh, and turned to the nearest rescuer. "Okay, your turn," I said, and held my arms for the sling. The rescuer didn't look at me. He was already coiling the rope, gaze passing through the space where I stood, to land on the ridge markers below. Another man ran by me with a thumbs up raised. Not to me, to someone else. I stepped into his path. "Hey," I said, and the words slid sideways in the wind and never reached him. Back at the helicopter, Evan twisted in his harness and pointed with both hands. His mouth worked around a shout I could not hear. He looked straight at me and cried, and the sound did not come. My wife followed his finger out into the white. Her eyes searched the ridge, then the clearing, then the broken trees. She did not find me. The words arrived as if spoken inside my chest. One survivor. The world tilted, but the snow held me up. My breath should have fogged. It didn't. My shoulder should have ached, but it didn't. The napkin in my wallet should have weighed something, but it didn't. And it did. It weighed everything. I looked down at my hands, and they were steady, the way dreams keep their own physics. I reached for the rope with my fingers, and they closed on air with certainty of failing to catch something in the dark. Evan's face in the door of the helicopter, wet with panic. He pointed at me again and mouthed a syllable I'd known since he was a toddler reaching for the cereal. He said, "Dad." I smiled because I didn't know what else to give him that wouldn't break me. I lifted my hand. I kept it there until it felt like a fact. The chopper rose. Snow blew in sheets. My wife wrapped both arms around our son and pressed his head to her chest. He fought her, tooth and nail. He fought to look out, still pointing, as if the insistence of a child could correct the math of the world. I held his eyes as long as I could. When the machine tilted and turned, he bucked against the blanket, like a swimmer, sighting shore and losing it to a wave. The noise thinned to a rumor. The wind recovered its ownership of the ridge. I stood for a while, because I had stood for so many things that day, that one more seemed polite. Then I sat. The napkin drawing had worn somehow in my pocket. I took it out. Together again. It said in a colored marker. It had no right to be kept under the Alaskan sky. I took the family photo from my wallet and laid it in my other hand. The lake behind us, blue and indifferent. My daughter's rabbit's ears, bent wrong. My wife's sunglasses catching the sun just so. Evan's grin, gapped from a missing tooth. My own face trying not to look tired and not succeeding. "We made it, buddy," I said to the place where the helicopter had been. "You made it." The saying of it unhooked something in me I didn't know how to name. I watched the ridge go blank with falling snow. I watched the prints we had made smooth over as if kindness were a weathering pattern. When the cold reached me again, it did so without malice. It was only itself. I closed my fingers around the paper. Faces of my loved ones still held dear to me. And let the white do what the white does. I faded into the snow.
They found him days later, half buried by a drift at the ridge's lip, right where his part of the plane had crashed. He'd never left. He was still sitting there, as if listening. One hand clenched the napkin with the child's drawing on it. The other held a summer photograph from the side of a lake that would thaw again. The boy lived. He tells the story differently each year. How he saw his father wave, how the snow swallowed everything, how the sky learned to be kind. He keeps 2 relics in a frame by his bed. Paper, fragile as breath, and faces that do not age. Survival is a curious mercy. It spares the body, and then sets it to work, rebuilding what the silence took. Love, however, is not a mercy. It is an oath. In the white country, where radios die and compasses grow shy, it is the only fire that keeps. Go on, traveler. Step lightly, where the snow forgets your name. If you hear someone call, answer softly. It may be the wind, it may be the past, or it may be a promise being kept. If you enjoy your time here on this channel, please like and subscribe. We'll be adding more and more of these amazing stories as time passes. And one day soon, we hope to grow into something grander and share more of this amazing world of fantasies with you. Please like and subscribe.